after some big moves in the window. Unfortunately, nobody here has made any moves. Anitej sitting on a 2014 laptop with our CTO having some technical difficulties, but we're joined by the whole crew again. Utsav clocking in, tested negative yesterday, so it's a good sign for everyone. None of us have to quarantine now. Apurv sitting in Jaipur and me in Bangalore, but big games again this weekend. But something interesting we wanted to start off with was talk about the new signings, and we'll obviously get to Thiago in a bit, but Bale back in the Premier League, like really having a lot to prove. Tottenham making another big signing with Reguilon. Wolves bringing in Semedo. And then obviously Leicester bringing in on there. So these are like some big signings, but I think we should start off by talking about Bale and Reguilon, like two really big signings. Reguilon was someone that a lot of big clubs all over Europe wanted. He's Madrid's third choice left back, so seemed like the type of signing United were going to make, but I guess Spurs are the new United. So what do you guys make of the Bale signing specifically, and then obviously Reguilon as well? And what do you think? Like, do you think Spurs? And they're heavily linked with Skriniar, who's the Inter Milan centre back, and they're like really seeming to back Jose. So looks like they have an exciting season up ahead. And Apur, the biggest Spurs fan, the only other Spurs fan in the four.
Yuck.
So we'll just talk about what you expect from them, what you expect from Bale specifically.
I'm a big Jose Mourinho fan, actually, not Spurs. But I mean, with Bale, I think if he, like, did you guys see Michael Richards talk on MNF about Bale, how good he was in that 2012-13 season, and then he was saying, like, even if he gives like 60% of that season with this team, Spurs are going to have a real chance, like not winning the league, but definitely fighting for the top four and challenging the top two, and making a good run, maybe winning that FA Cup or whatever. And I think he's right, because if Bale and Reguilon start, they had that problem with Danny Rose. They moved him on. Ben Davies doesn't look too good. Hopefully this guy will be good. I can't pronounce his name, but and
Reguilon.
And Bale will be exceptional, especially when you see like Son and Kane perform the way they did, and then Bale just coming in that front three, front four.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be
they're going to set up?
4-2-3-1 for sure, with Bale and Son on either wings and Kane.
I mean, I think it's a risky move. 20 million for a player who hasn't played who has barely featured in any games for the past 2 seasons, who's injury prone as well. How do you think he's just going to come in and start firing like he used to for Madrid in the early days? I don't know, man. Like, he's currently injured as well. Although apparently it's not a serious injury. He's going to be back in like 2 weeks and can feature.
I don't think he's injured. He's just
not unfit, injured. But he is unfit as well. I don't see how he can just come in and.
In his interview, he said, like, when the guy who was interviewing him asked him, he said, now I just have to spend the next 2-3 weeks on my match fitness, because, as you all know, he said that in the interview blatantly, like, I don't have any match fitness. So he's probably going to work on that, and hopefully, like, honestly, even as a Liverpool fan, I still want to see Gareth Bale play again in the Premier League whatever is going on.
I did hear that for his training regimen, they're just going to make him sprint from one hole to the other when he goes to play 18. So, I mean, he should be fit in no time.
No shortage of golf jokes in this podcast in the Twitterverse right now.
We should actually pivot to being a golf podcast, I think.
Golf podcast. Actually, then we can still talk about Bale, but just talk a little bit. Apu mentioned that game. Anitej had an interesting take on that game. The first half was pathetic from Spurs, and I talked to Apu. I was like, Kane's first 7 passes, I think 4 were assists, which just goes to show you how isolated he was and what a brilliant player he is at the end of the day, that he doesn't even need to be in goal scoring positions to affect the game. And I think he looks fit after a long time. Kane has gone through so many injuries over the last 6 to 8 months. And I think finally he looks like the best version of himself. And I completely agree with Apoor on that point, though, that despite Tottenham doing well means like one less spot for United to finish above them, but it's still something that, when he left, you wanted him to carry on that form that he showed in the Premier League, in the La Liga and for Madrid. And no doubt he's done so many amazing things for them. But if you still look back at his career, it would be a little bit underwhelming at Madrid. So to just see a great player come back and do so well, it would be really, really fun to see. And Utsav, with the question or with the point, what do you say?
No. And I think just on the point, I'm kind of more on, Anitej's side, just from the standpoint of how do we really know, how he's going to play due to his match fitness. But the one thing I will say is that, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, Spurs have tried all kinds of different things. It doesn't seem to be making a true difference. So, I mean, at some point, you just have to say, like, we have to take a risk in some sort. And this is the type of risk that could pay off, in huge amounts.
Could take you to a level that no ordinary signing could. Right.
Correct.
And all the times they've tried to replace, Bale, finally they had to bring back Bale to replace Bale.
They still have
also his agent apparently said like it could well go on beyond the season as well. So he might actually stay for longer if he does well. So you never know.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's without a doubt the biggest answer. But if you guys want to mention, like, just another interesting piece of business was Wolves replacing Doherty with Semedo. And that's been getting a lot of interesting. I don't know. I mean, I guess we've watched a little bit of Semedo, and the last time any of us watched him was probably that Bayern game where he got absolutely ripped apart. But what do you guys make of that? And the Wolves have made a bunch of really interesting signings. They have signed players like Fabio Silva, which is like not the type of player you would expect a bottom half Premier League club to sign. These are the type of players that could potentially take you to a really, really high level in Europe, because this guy's 18 years old. Semedo's, again, like not too young, he's 25, but like they're signing him from Barca. And a good point one of you made earlier was comparing their signings with Everton. And who do you guys see finishing in a better position based on their signings so far?
I mean, both teams, I don't know. I mean, Everton definitely from the signing standpoint definitely feels more exciting, but that isn't to necessarily say that Wolves are out of it. You know what I mean? Just because of... What was that?
Wolves definitely... that's a good point, but Wolves started from a better position that they didn't have to make those like James type signings.
So they don't have to make as many changes, but Everton do look really, really good in my surprise of the season. Surprise James thing looks like it's as usual a lock. So if you guys need any more predictions like that, I can continue to do that. But I mean, I hope Wolves finish above Everton because screw Everton. But at this point, I would say it's neck to neck. We'll see how Spurs do, whether Spurs are going to be dragged down to that Europa League battle that they were last season, that they managed to just squeak through. But I mean, it's definitely interesting to see. And I wonder what the deal is in terms of this is good for people that have Adama Traore, because this is only going to push him further up the field with Semedo coming in to lock up that side of the defense.
I was going to say, this is going to be really interesting to watch Adama Traore now, because I think he's going to play where Jota played, and Semedo is going to be on the right wing back position. But I don't know, it'll be scary if both of them play on the right side. That amount of pace and physicality both of them provide.
I do think
the thing is Semedo provides zero attacking though, so that's one good thing, which is why people are criticizing them getting rid of Doherty, because he was such an important part of the way they play, and they basically upgraded for 20 million and got a worse player, according to most people who've watched a lot of Semedo. So it'll be interesting to see. But before Anitej makes the point, I just want to move on talking about signings and an utter lack of signings. The big Red Devils from Manchester had... I mean, they, honestly, in my opinion, maybe it's my bias as a United fan, but they've had as big a transfer window as Chelsea, as Spurs, as Wolves, as, any of the big teams, purely by the criticism, by the lack of business. And it's so blatantly obvious what the squad needs to improve, and yet there's absolutely no support given to the manager. And I, for one, will admit that I blamed a lot of our deficiencies on the manager, but the more... the longer Solskjaer stays in charge, the more you can see it's just a complete lack of support from the board. I don't want to talk about the Brighton game, so not the Brighton game, rather the Palace game. So if you guys want to talk about it was a pathetic display. I think it's fair to say, like, we had 75% possession, but yet the biggest chances were without a doubt all fell to Palace. De Gea made a couple of great saves. One, unfortunately, didn't count. So it's looking a little bit tricky for the boys. And I was reading a lot about how there's no need to knee jerk. It's just 1 week. It's just they've had such a small preseason. But what do you guys make of what's going to happen to this club? Are we in a good state or are we in a great state?
I actually think there are a lot
His
of.
eyes lit up.
I actually think there are a lot of similar problems that United are facing that Arsenal faced under Emery. One being Lindelof and Mustafi, very similar players, I think. Um, Dude, like, what was he against Zaha, man? That was literally Mustafi against Zaha. Like, that's what I was thinking of.
Kind of like Van
Um,
Dijk against Bamford.
Another,
Similar.
your left back as well, that hamburger eating guy. What's his name? Luke Shaw.
Hamburger
Cheeseburger.
eating guy. I've never heard that one used
There's a
before.
meme about it. You can eat 3 cheeseburgers at once or some shit like that. Your left back can't do that, so he's the best. Yeah, I mean, I think both of them were involved in all the goals you guys conceded, I think, against Palace. So I think defense is something that you should have invested in. But I think you guys got a little too obsessive with the Sancho thing and you just wasted time. And I don't think that's even
Yeah, you
gonna.
should have just moved on and gotten someone at least.
Yeah. And at this point, you should just like try getting people on loan, if anything.
I think
And this-
they're pretty close. They're pretty close to signing that Porto left back.
Chaos.
Yeah,
They're
and
not close
Just
to
like how we
shit,
were
bro. That's
close
all
to
they keep
signing
saying.
Sancho.
Agreed personal terms and nothing happens.
bro, Fabrizio Romano said, "Here we go." So something's up
He said, here
He
we
said,
go.
he said
No.
he
today.
sleeps 5
Just
hours
tweeted
during the
that.
transfer market. When the transfer window is open, he says he sleeps 5 hours a night.
Modi sleeps 3 hours every day. What does that mean?
I think you should pivot to a BJP podcast, but maybe you can join us next week for that. But no, Anitej's right. I don't think he said here we go. He's like his last tweet was about Tellez 18 minutes ago. He says talks continue between United and Porto for Alex Tellez.
They're
Player
just
style
talking.
still convinced. Yeah. So the new United are going to be called Agreed Personal Terms FC. Man, it's
Okay,
now Porto.
Ashwin, before you say something, what do you? So if they don't end up making any new signings with whatever business they've had, like Van de Beek and I don't know who else they've got, where do you see them?
That's it.
Like what kind of football
you
do
can
see
just
them
end it
play?
there.
Where do you think they'll finish?
I don't know. Like honestly, I do agree that this game was a little bit of a one-off, no preseason, all of that. The rest of the other clubs had a few more weeks to practice and prepare their players for their first few fixtures, whereas United didn't have that luxury. But I think it's like the attitude around the club is so negative right now, like in terms of nobody is like really blaming the players, nobody's blaming the manager for anything. There was this really interesting BT Sport did a poll of optimism before the season, and the most optimistic fans were Southampton, and like second last were United, and last were West Ham. So at least we're like a little bit better than one team, but it just, I mean, I think that's what's going to affect the club, moving forward. It's like we're back in the Champions League, but there's absolutely no excitement for that. The squad is improving steadily. Like if you look at Greenwood, like there's so much potential for players to grow. There's so much potential for them to like become better versions of themselves than they were last year. But nobody seems to be bothered about that, right? Because it was so clear. Like Anita said, we spent the whole transfer window convinced as United fans. I remember Rishabh, who's a Chelsea fan, asked me, "Are you excited?" I'm like, "Bro, I'm not even excited because it seems so obvious," And like I just regret all those conversations and all those words because I think that would have just created such a buzz, such a spark. We would have felt like we're back where we need to be as a club, competing with the top clubs for players, competing with the top clubs for like competitions. But the negativity around the club, I feel like, is really going to cost us. And I feel bad that Ole has to be the one that, is responsible for ridding that negativity and taking the club forward when it's really not in his hands, where he's done the best he can, I guess, with what he's been given. So I really don't see us finishing top four the way things stand right now, especially the improvement Spurs are making, the improvement Chelsea are making. And I hate to say it, but the improvement Arsenal are making, I feel like we're definitely in that boat of, of those four clubs, and we're not clearly above or below any of those, but if anything, we're below them. So I don't know. I'm just like not
And
excited at all, but
speaking of like competition and United going down, like now they're facing like Leicester's probably even better placed than them, and Leicester's facing Man City. what do you guys make of that? Because Leicester's been the bogey team of Man City in the last couple seasons. Somewhere or the other, Leicester seems to get a result. But I don't know what did you all think of the John Stones Nathan Ake partnership, and how City lined up against Wolves?
They had a good first half, but second half they struggled, and this is kind of reminiscent of what happened last season as well, because I think they were up 2-0, but then second half Wolves came back, and I think did they get 3 points or a point? I don't remember, but yeah, they
Wolves
did
won
come back.
3-2.
Yeah, they won.
Yeah,
3-2.
Wolves won.
yeah, they won.
Adama just went
So,
off. Yeah.
and that nearly happened again. I mean, Foden's with that nutmeg on De Bruyne, and then that cross.
Yeah, and Foden's missed the chip as well.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
chip. So there were definitely chances for Wolves, and City looked very shaky in the second half. But the interesting thing that I thought was he played Fernandinho and Rodri together, and I haven't seen him do that often last season. So playing two CDMs against Wolves, it seemed like he was trying to stop the counters, and I don't know if he's going to do that moving on, going forward this season, because I don't know, dude.
They're so
It's
slow.
just-
If that
yeah.
happens, it just feels like both of
But
them
then
are
they have De
really,
Bruyne
really
as one of
slow.
them who's-
Yeah, honestly,
Right, but
I
I
think
mean-
that.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying that the reason I feel like he's done that is to put De Bruyne in that number 10, and I think there's far too much reliance on De Bruyne right now, in that team, which is fair enough because a player of that quality, he deserves everything to go through him and everything should go through him. But the way City have attacked over the last couple of years, they've had so many weapons on so many sides. Right now, it honestly, I don't know what it is about them. They just don't seem to have that real menacing feel going forward like they used to.
I know what you
Definitely in
mean.
the first half, they looked absolutely scary in the first half. Not, I wouldn't say scary either. I would just say they look good. But in the second half, to see City hold the ball in the corner nervously, so scared. I just didn't expect to see them in the first game of the season start off like that. Start off, just desperate to get 3 points. They're the type of team who plays that champagne football, as Anita says, on the floor, keeping the ball. And they did keep the ball well in the second half, to be fair to them. But that's again a very unlike City thing. They were playing like Everton, just keeping the ball in their half, scared to attack, because every time Wolves got the ball, it looked like they were creating a high quality chance. And I don't know, moving forward, I think it's going to be a lot of tinkering for Pep.
For
Mendy
City,
looks
think
terrible.
about it. Within 2 seasons, they've lost Company, Silva, and Aguero. You can say Aguero right now because he's not going to be fit
the
for
worst
another
Sane.
Sane
Sane
too.
as well.
But three of the title winners, basically experienced players that are not there on the pitch anymore. So obviously you're going to find a difference.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I felt that as well. Yeah,
No, yeah.
he
So
did
you were
get
going to say
burst.
something before I interrupted you.
I was just gonna say, I mean, way too early predictions, but obviously bookmakers had City. I think it was title chances of winning title. They were 56%. Liverpool with 32. After the 2 games you've seen, I guess City have only played one. To be fair, do you still think City are favorites? Do you think that their squad needs some freshening up? What do you think?
I think the squad has had enough freshening up, to be honest. They've got a winger, they've got a new centre back, and I don't know. I think.
Do you still have them as favorites though? And we can use this as a point to talk about Liverpool and who are playing Arsenal, on Monday.
I mean,
but
on a squad basis, I don't
with the
think.
Thiago signing, I think it's gonna be. I think they Liverpool get up there with City, but I still would edge City to win the title, but not by much. Not how much it was before the start of the season.
Which is weird because it's only been one game.
Because I just wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about comparing Liverpool and City, right? You'd say, Anitej mentioned those 3 names, Kompany, Aguero, David Silva, all 3 genuinely world-class players, right? Again, my definition of world-class is, are you in the conversation for best player in the world in your position? Liverpool right now, Alisson, Trent, Van Dijk sucks, but Robertson, and that front 2. And now you've genuinely added a world-class midfielder, so that was the only position of the 3 phases of the game where they didn't have and now they've
Henderson and Milner.
Because we always had those kind
together,
of midfielders that were just the glue, that were holding the rest and letting everyone else do their job. But now you have someone that can. And Pep Linders was talking about this, the things that he was talking about were just the solutions that he will offer for problems that they see and foresee that they're going to have this season would be making that deep ball, finding getting possession back and whatnot. So
And because, like you said, Bala, like the midfielders are glue guys who are expected to win the ball back. It's not like Thiago can't do that, right? He's
He
also
does that
capable
too.
of
Yeah.
winning the ball back, and at the same time, he has probably the best range of passing the Premier League has seen since Paul Scholes. But like it's
The
going
most
to be
interesting thing was that when he came on, he didn't go in the number 8 role. He played as the number 6. He was the link between the defense and the midfield or attack, which was incredible. And how
Well,
every single thing went through him was so good to watch. And as everyone saw that he broke the record for most passes in 45 minutes or whatnot. And it was like, it was right there. You could see it, like why and how he's going to make such a big difference to the team.
well, the one thing
he
is,
had
if
more
you look
passes
at
than the
what
whole
Klopp
Chelsea
said,
squad, right? Something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
And what Klopp said before the game when they asked him if he was going to start, he said, the biggest thing is adjusting to the formation because Bayern play, two CDMs with the 10, which we typically do not do. So it was interesting, I think, and that's probably why he played deeper. But what I was going to say, now I cannot remember it. So we can just move along.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's like Apur already mentioned that. Bala mentioned that we're gonna see them play against Arsenal.
Oh,
and
yeah. So what I was going to say is also just a quick note. Sorry to cut you off there, but what does this mean for Keita? Is this bad for him? Is this good for him? Because are you still going to play? You're assuming you're going to play Fabinho and Henderson probably 90% of the time.
I feel like Henderson's time will, like, it'll fluctuate between Henderson and Keita coming in.
It
Also,
will.
the fact
And
that you
I think
didn't
more
get a
often
centre
than
back
not,
in.
who's your strongest midfield three then?
yeah, but I think it depends on the nature of the game also, right? Like if they're playing against like a smaller team, like imagine like I feel like the reason why he played in that position against Chelsea was because of 10 men. They just wanted to choke them out, and having him as like a
Right.
6 is like unplayable, right? Because you're just never gonna lose the ball. So having him as an 8 would like not really be required in that type of game. But I think in like the more like tightly packed games against your Burnleys and Wolves and like teams that really like to sit back, maybe you play Keita and Thiago. That because
Yeah, then you can
and another
play
thing I wanted to
Semedo
mention
or-
was I don't know if you guys were as impressed as I was, but I thought Fabinho at centre back was like brilliant, man. I thought
So
he was like really,
yeah,
really
everyone
good. So
that
that's like
that
a
game against
scary
Bayern
proposition
2
as
years
well,
ago.
right?
That game against
Exactly.
Bayern 2 years
Mane
ago, the
goal
way
game.
he just
Yeah.
right, exactly where he just no, the first
Locked
leg
down
was when he
Lewandowski, dude. Yeah,
right,
the
he
nil,
just
my bad, yeah.
completely shut him down, and he won man of the match, I guess, again against Chelsea for his performance, which is also something. I mean, just because of Joe Gomez's young age, I don't think that's actually like it's definitely an option that Klopp can use, but I don't think it's something that will happen moving forward permanently.
Okay, so
Obviously.
in FIFA, I know me and Bala do this a lot. Like when you're defending and the player takes an extra touch, I just like get out and you tackle them, right? That's like a reflex action for me when I was watching Fabinho versus Werner. Werner took like that extra touch. I'm like, get out, and Fabinho just takes it off. It was too good.
What about
no, but
Werner's
it was
miss, the one
interesting.
that
Like,
was
yeah.
offside? Like, what was
Oh,
that miss where it was
so
called offside?
bad, dude. On stray offside on that
Yeah.
Insta page, they're like, this is not being talked about enough. Like, this needs to be spoken about right now.
But
The one
moving on
miss.
to what do you think? I mean, we can talk about how good Arsenal have looked and kind of, what do you think is going to happen there for
I
that
think it's
big
going to
game?
be a very, very tough game. Just because the way Arteta sets up against the big teams and how, like, they counterattack. It's similar to what Klopp did in the beginning of his reign at Liverpool, where they would just sit back. They're good while they have the ball, but they don't mind the other team attacking, and then they use their pace to go up and score that counter-attacking goal. And they have the perfect outlet in Aubameyang for that.
I will say this though, we have a certain advantage in the sense that I feel like we spoke about this last season. This fixture especially has a lot of like these 10-minute blitzes that usually the home team has where the game just like, goes away. But I don't think that happened this time because honestly, I feel like that comes from the crowd. Like when you score a goal, there's like that entire momentum and then
And
Anfield's on you.
yeah, and it's also
that
like
just won't be there.
Arteta is way more pragmatic, I feel
Exactly.
like, and Klopp has turned more pragmatic over the years.
True.
So,
True.
Yeah,
But
I
I
think
mean, yeah, so
the reason why
that's like the biggest thing that I used to be scared every time Arsenal visited Anfield. So this time it's going to be a little different, and I mean that just gives me a little bit of hope that we can at least like try and get a result.
Another thing is like that grinding nature. I feel like Arsenal's stadium over the last few years has been like really negative, like when they're like down in the game or when they're 1-1. Honestly, like that game, that West Ham game, is a game that they would have lost under Emery. They would have drawn under Wenger. Like Antonio scores that. He doesn't hit the post against when it's Emery. So I think he's just completely changed the mentality around the club. We're talking about positivity, negativity. Arteta, I was talking to an Arsenal fan yesterday and I was going off about Arsenal and he was getting so upset. I'm like, well, why do you think your team is suddenly good now? Like it's not good. Like you're better. He's like, no, bro, we're one of Europe's best teams still. I'm like, I don't know what to say to this guy, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be an exciting game for sure. I think, like it's going to be a really, really like different type of game than these games have typically been.
So I mean, the last two times Arsenal have gotten the better of us. So,
I mean, we are going to be playing them twice in a week at Anfield, most probably. If most likely Liverpool's going to beat. So then we're going to be playing the Carabao as well at Anfield.
But that won't be right next week, right?
I think it is. They said twice in a week. So I think it'll be next week.
Okay, well, how about this? We'll take the Premier League win and we'll give you the Carabao one. I'm fine.
I mean that's what Klopp is going to do anyways.
I mean, yeah.
One or the other.
And all that. No, but just coming back to a point Anitej made about crowds, and I just wanted to... So this last week was the highest scoring Premier League weekend ever. And I just wanted to know your guys' take, because I feel like, so a lot of these small teams like Sheffield, Burnley, a lot of their defensive solidity, I feel, comes from the crowd. Like in a 0-0 game, they take so much energy and so much like concentration comes from, like just the energy that the crowd gives you.
Yeah.
Is this a trend that do you think it was just a one-off that this weekend was like goal-filled, or do you think it's going to be something that we see for the rest of the season if it continues to be behind closed doors? Is it going to be an offensive-friendly season, or is it just a one-off and it's like not something to take like deeper? Because I feel like the teams like especially like Anitej mentioned Sheffield and talking about fans and all of that, but I feel like those grind out 0-0, 1-1, especially when you're playing a big team against a really like good attacking force, you need that crowd to sort of like keep concentration, right? Because like every tackle is cheered, every possession won is like so like fiercely contested. What do you guys think? And I'd like to hear your opinions on that.
I mean, I think it's just more of at least of this new season that started. I think it's just more because there's been no proper preseason as such, more than a lack of crowd. Because before the games after lockdown, it was still pretty tight, I thought.
But the one thing is, if you look at the games yesterday from the Carabao Cup, there was a couple huge blitzes. Once again, West Ham won by like 6 goals but scored a bunch. Everton scored 5 again, like for consecutive times for the first time since like the 60s or something. Chelsea put another 5 or 6, obviously against completely more inferior opposition. So who knows? I mean, hopefully for fantasy owners, it stays this way.
I would say this though, the lack of crowd has definitely helped like the newcomers, because you see Castagna and all these other guys, they've just like
chill
hit the
about
ground.
Castagna,
so many of them.
Yeah.
No, another thing about crowds, like, so Premier League was scheduled, I think, after October 1st to start letting in like 1/5 of the crowd or something. And then Boris Johnson was asked in the parliament, like in Italy and Germany, that they are allowing people like the rate is so low. He's like, oh, we believe, because our country believes in freedom, that's why we have no cases. So we don't expect to see crowds before 2021 for sure.
Oh man, England is in a good state right now politically. Like that was a hilarious interview, man. They're like, and your guys are saying Trump is worse than this guy. They're both the same. Like
well, some fan tweeted about that the Spurs Ajax game, because of the timing that bars have to shut down. They were like, imagine shutting this bar down 5 minutes after Lucas Moura scored that third goal or something like that, and it's just ridiculous.
They actually preponed the Liverpool Arsenal game, I think, by 15 minutes so that people can watch it in bars.
No way.
Yeah. They've changed 2 kickoff times for Liverpool
by 15 minutes or something.
Oh, so Liverpool have a big game against Lincoln City, so I don't want to keep you guys from that. Is anybody have any final closing statements to make about this weekend? Anything specific that you want our viewers to? We were going to give some fantasy
Social
tips,
dilemma.
but seeing how both of us are out of the top 150 in India, maybe next week when we get back in the top 150, we'll give some
Get Bruno
fantasy
Fernandes in. Get Bruno Fernandes in.
The
Get
captain.
Bruno Fernandes in, drop Son. That's a good move last week.
Okay, I'm stopping the recording.
Anyway, good night.
See you guys.